Good afternoon, everyone. One more time. Good afternoon, everyone. We are at a celebration. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Marissa Aho, and it is an honor to welcome you all to the launch of Resilient Houston. I want to take a moment to thank Mayor Sylvester Turner for the opportunity to serve in his administration as Chief Resilience Officer. I also want to thank him for his tremendous leadership on urban resilience and congratulate him on this very historic occasion. Without further delay, it is my pleasure to introduce Mayor Sylvester Turner.
Look, let me just say good afternoon, and it is a celebration. Even before I even get too started, I do want to thank Marissa Aho because she has just been phenomenal and in a very short time of getting us to this point. As I was telling a few people a few minutes ago, LA's loss is Houston's gain, and she was the Chief Resilient Officer for Mayor Garcetti. And we were able to woo her from LA, and in a very short time, she and all of those people who have worked with her have gotten us to this point, Resilient Houston. So please give it up to Marissa Aho. Thank you. So look, good afternoon, and we're here today to celebrate a major milestone in Houston's journey to be a more resilient city. I want to acknowledge Stewart Sarkozy-Banoczy and Lauren Farrell from the Global Resilient Cities Network for joining us today, and you'll be hearing from Stewart. Stewart, thank you for being here today. And then I want to Jason Klein and Shell for their sponsorship of Houston's resilience effort. Jason, thank you so very much. Shell has underwritten this entire effort. And then Justin Ehrenworth and Colin McHugh and Hugh Robert from the Water Institute of the Gulf, and Jeff Hebert from HR&A for their contributions to this work, and Nicole Farini, CRO, the Chief Resilient Officer for El Paso. Where's Nicole? Nicole is back there from El Paso, and Genesis Galvino, Deputy to CRO's Chief Resilient Officer for Dallas. Thank you for being here. And then I also want to acknowledge all of my incredible partners in this effort as we move to build a more resilient city. Councilmember Carlos Cisneros, Councilmember Sally Alcorn, Councilmember David Robertson, and Councilmember Abby Kamen. Please give it up to all of them. Look, Hurricane Harvey changed Houston. It changed Houstonians. It was our turning point to do things differently as we continue to face 21st century challenges, including flooding, housing affordability, aging infrastructure, and climate change, among many others. Our efforts need to be bold, transformative, and aligned to achieve the outcomes Houstonians deserve. And Resilient Houston is the plan to get it done. Resilient Houston is a framework for transformative change that comes from thinking and acting together to build and grow Houston's long-term resilience. We will need our partners and every Houstonian at the table to achieve this vision, which includes Houston will be a healthy place to live. Last month, we were successful working in conjunction with our federal partners and state partners and people on the county level. We were successful in preventing a concrete batch plant from setting up shop on a residential block across from a community center and neighborhood park. This was an important win for our communities, but we have much more work to do, and I think we all recognize that. In Houston, your life expectancy can be predicted by your neighborhood. Let me underscore that. In Houston, your life expectancy can be predicted by your neighborhood. and there is a 24-year difference in life expectancy between neighborhoods. That's unacceptable. Now, I'm not talking about a third world country. I'm not talking about some other state. I'm not talking about some other city. I'm talking about in the city of Houston. We have the largest medical complex in the world here, and we need to continue to work together to improve safety, increase opportunities for recreation, and access to healthy foods. But we also need to address generations of environmental injustices. We are working with Harris County to establish a joint environmental justice working group to increase coordination and collaboration between governmental entities, advocates, universities, and the private sector to ensure Houston is a healthier place to live for everyone. I see Beth White there from the Parks Board. Thank you, Beth, for being here today. Houston will be an equitable, inclusive, and affordable city. And let me underscore that. Houston will be an equitable, inclusive, and affordable city. Houston must not become a tale of two inequitable cities of have and have-nots. And a better way of saying that, it cannot become the norm. It cannot become acceptable. It cannot be okay. It can never be okay to live in a great city like the city of Houston, but a city of have and have-nots. And so through my Complete Communities initiative, Shannon Buggs giving leadership to that, we have focused on improving the quality of life in 10 Houston neighborhoods that have been historically underinvested. My Director of Complete Communities, Shannon Buggs, and Chief Resilient Officer, Marissa Aho, and others are coordinating to leverage opportunities to increase neighborhood resilience. In January, the city held a flooding resilience workshop in Kashmere Gardens that focused on some of the recommendations in Resilient Houston. We received input from community members for how best to move these initiatives forward. Houston will be a leader in climate adaptation. Houston will be a leader in climate adaptation. Resilient Houston and the city's climate action plan will work hand in hand. And this relationship between climate mitigation through greenhouse gas reduction and carbon neutrality in accordance with the Paris Agreement, and climate adaptation that addresses the effects of a changing climate that we are experiencing today, including increased precipitation and flooding, larger showers, hurricanes, and higher head days, is critical for Houston's future. And then Houston will be a city that grows up and not out. And up to this point, we have been growing out, not up, and we all have been paying the price. Every weekday, Houston's population increases by over 650,000 people as people commute into the city for work or school. And let me underscore that. 640 square miles, 2.3 million Houstonians, but every single day, Monday through Friday, the number of people that are coming into the city of Houston, our daytime population increases by 650,000. That is the equivalent of the entire population of Memphis, Tennessee, coming into the city of Houston every day, Monday through Friday. We may see an additional 1 million people choose Houston as their home in the next 30 years. As Houston and Greater Houston grows, we want to attract people to live in the city where they have shorter commutes, can choose transit, live in safe, walkable, and green neighborhoods, and where they can afford a home at any income and at any stage of their life. For this to happen, we must attract people to the city through more transit-oriented development in coordination with Metro Next, or through the development of more ADUs, accessory dwelling units, in single-family neighborhoods. Come back, and our message, we want people to return from the lands. People looking at me like, now where's that mayor going? I'm talking about Pearland, Woodland, Sugarland, all of the lands where people have gone. We want them to return. And if they're in the city of Houston, they don't have to commute from the lands every single day. And then Houston will be a transformative economy that builds forward. Now more than ever, every investment we make must contribute to our resilience, from our billion-dollar infrastructure projects to our Smart Cities initiatives, to the way we ensure small businesses can survive a disruption. Through Build Houston Forward, our program to enhance, improve, and maintain our streets and drainage systems, and our disaster recovery and mitigation programs, and our commitment to leading the energy transition, and many, many other initiatives, we are aligning our investments to improve our overall resilience and keep our economy competitive in the 21st century. Lastly, I want to thank Houston's Resilient Officer, Marissa Aho. In less than 1 year, she has enacted changes that go deep into our culture and transform the way we approach the challenges that we face. She is the only Chief Resilient Officer to have developed 2 resilient strategies, and I am confident that through her expertise and passion, with your continued partnership, we can meet the goals and targets in Resilient Houston. Today, Houston's standards for resilience are higher. As we continue to position Houston as a stronger, sustainable, and more resilient city, we need to address 21st century challenges head on to remain competitive while ensuring that all Houstonians can thrive. We are doing a lot of incredible, fantastic things. The Climate Action Plan, complete communities, building an innovative ecosystem where the focus is on clean tech, resilience in terms of flood mitigation, all of the infrastructure projects, Metro Next. We're doing parks, green space. We're doing a lot of incredible things. But you can do a lot of good things, but if they are not connected and aligned, and we're moving in the same direction, we can do a lot of good things, but no one in the end will see the good things that we do. And so how do we pull it all together? We pull it together through this. This is what pulls it all together. It has to align. And if we're not moving in the same direction, we're going to become frustrated and we're not going to be pleased with the product. And quite frankly, in this term, we have to be intentional and we have to move with the greatest degree of urgency. We're not going to build the resilient city in 4 years completely. But with this plan, we can start moving today in the right direction. Now becomes the implementation, okay? The plan is here. You got to read it, okay? It can't be on the shelf. You got to read it, and it has to be incorporated here. And when that happens, this city will truly lead the way. Now, lastly, we were not in the first 100 resilient cities, but we are in the first 100 in our plan. And the mantra for our city, you go big or you go home. And you lead, and if you don't lead, you're following. So, and let's get it done. Again, to Marissa and to all of you, and I mean that sincerely, to all of our partners, those, our department directors, and our stakeholders outside of the city, to all of you, let me thank you. And even though we're not at the finish line, and this is no way saying we have accomplished, but what it does say is that we are now aligning ourselves so that we can run smarter, quicker, and get some transformational results. And for that, that's worth celebrating. Now give yourselves a big hand. Thank you so very much, Marissa.
Thank you, Mayor. So now I am pleased to introduce Stewart Sarkozy-Banoczy. Stewart is here both representing the legacy of 100 resilient cities pioneered by the Rockefeller Foundation and its newly launched officially yesterday in Abu Dhabi next phase, so the Global Resilient Cities Network, where he is Managing Director for North America. Thank you, Stewart.
Thanks, Marissa, and thank you, Mayor Turner, and everyone that contributed to this plan. I could not be happier to be here, and there's a number of reasons that I'm going to cover for why that is. But really, this is a moment to celebrate. We were just talking that it's tough to celebrate when you feel like it's time to implement now. Which we have to take this pause, and we always did with our cities, to take this pause and say, congratulations, you've gotten this far, and the work that comes from now on really includes everyone that's in the room. And each of the cities that I worked with over the last years reaches this point, and it's an inflection point, and it's a pivot that every city has to make. And I think Houston, of all cities, is in a really interesting position to make that pivot. So on behalf of the Global Resilient Cities Network, and especially the US and Canadian cities, part of the North America group that they're in, a massive congratulations from us as we, as a network, evolve at the exact same time that this is happening. So there's a lot of fantastic opportunity for us to even just talk about the work that Houston is doing. And as I said to the mayor, in Abu Dhabi right now at the World Urban Forum, they're talking about Houston, its water report. The water report. The first part, they're talking about Houston. In Abu Dhabi at the World Urban Forum, they're talking about Houston. And check on social media, because you'll see it there as well as the day progresses. But one of the reasons that I am excited to stand here is that at one point I was working on the expansion of the 100. And so Houston is special, you all know that, but there's a reason it's particularly special for me to be standing here, because as we talked about expanding the network, this was one of the cities that first came into that fold. So it is the first of the new phase. It is the 101st. It's also the first that has a two-time Chief Resilience Officer who came to bat. And so I'd like to give another round of applause for Marissa for all the work that she's done. It's also the first city, and Jason, I'm looking at you, to say thank you, because Shell made that pivot moment for us at the time that the network was trying to figure out how we add cities. And so it's also the first to be separately sponsored and funded to do this process. And so thank you to you, thank you to Shell for that, please. And there's one more thing that's kind of a first, and that is I have to thank the mayor and I have to thank Marissa, because she also has been on the global steering committee, as we call it, of this new network as it was being formed or reformed or evolving out of 100 Resilient Cities. So she has spent time on a global team talking about the structure and what the new vision is for this organization that is much more city-led, CRO-led globally. And that's the image you see on the screen now. This is what Houston is part of. And the little green dots are where those global steering committee members reside as CROs. So what Marissa has helped us do is really move into this next phase, even as she was building the advancement of the strategy. So another thank you to Marissa for that, and to the mayor for letting us have a little bit of her time. So today, Houston joins 78 other cities, which means that, Mayor, yes, there's a lot of cities who haven't done their strategies yet. Some that started long before you. Not to be mentioned, every city's different, but it does say something about the work that happened here in Houston and the speed at which. Now, we were just talking about how Hurricane Harvey woke people up. And I'm sure all of you have thought about that a lot, and the floods that have come since, and what the day-to-day is like. This is the same in some of the other cities, but we know that when you look at DC, Chicago, San Francisco, you also have our Chief Resilience Officers from El Paso and Dallas here. So there is a Texas Resilient Cities movement. We're going to talk about that some more tomorrow. And so you are leading the state, but you're also leading the country, and you're part of this larger network. And as Nicole and Genesis and now Marissa and the mayor know, this has been strategy time, campaign time, and now you really have to move to implementation. So I want to talk just a second more about what's in the strategy and what comes next, because Houston dug deep, and there are other projects and other reports that have been fed into this, and there's a real synergy around them, but you had to look the physical shocks and stresses in the eye, as well as the social, cultural, educational, environmental, economic, business-related issues. And that is apparent in this document. Because when you look at this and you look at the goals that are around the flooding, you look at the goals that are around the neighborhoods, arts and culture as part of resilience, the way that this is structured has an element and a learning, I would have to say, that comes from all the other cities, and this is the next best phase of this. So it's amazing to look at this document, and there were people in the room who had their hands on it, and that's why it is as good as it is. I also love Goal 5, I have to say, that's in the strategy, because those arts, culture, neighborhood components, civil society, embedding resilience in what a neighborhood and a citizen knows about it this is where I see a turn for Houston. Yes, you have to build up and not out, but you have to also have people understanding and relating to resilience in a way that makes sense to their neighborhood. And that's a fantastic piece of what's in this strategy. And I also want to say that the work around water, because that's also one of my favorite areas, is something that Houston is going to continue to lead on. We have a set of cities around the globe who have some similar issues, and I think Houston is now tightly fitted in with the Rotterdams and the Singapores and the Jakartas and others who have looked us in the eye and said, how will we live with our water and in what ways? But that doesn't mean ignoring the neighborhood issues, the community issues, equity issues, housing, transportation, et cetera. It's all of it together. So to close, congratulations, Mayor Turner. It's amazing. Congratulations, Marissa. We are super pleased to be here as the Global Resilient Cities Network, and we're looking forward to the implementation and the work together with you and all the other partners and with Shell as this moves forward. So thank you very much.
None of this would be possible without the generous support of Shell. So I am very happy that Jason Klein, Vice President of U.S. Energy Transition Strategy at Shell Oil Company, is here to celebrate with us today. Jason.
Thank you, Marissa, and thank you, Mayor Turner, for inviting me here today. Today marks a significant milestone in Houston's journey. Fulfilling the long-term vision and plan for a more resilient city is paramount to ensuring that Houston remains the energy capital of the world for years to come, and to maintain its regional, national, and global economic leadership. I remember being at this kickoff in November of 2018, which feels in some ways like it was only yesterday. We've achieved so much, and so it's a real pleasure to be here and have a plan with very concrete actions, 62 tangible actions across 5 chapters that I'm sure Marissa's going to guide us through. A lot of those goals align with Shell's ambition to thrive through the energy transition. And I'll touch on one particular action, number 45, leveraging Houston's energy capital role to lead innovation in the global energy transition. Innovation is core to everything we do at Shell. We've achieved many industry firsts, and it's why we champion open innovation and open innovation ecosystems. It's why we're supporting a number of incubators and innovation hubs here in Houston, including the Rice Carbon Hub, Houston Exponential, and HX Ventures. Because attracting investment and talent and innovation is critical to supporting the diversification of our energy industry and to attracting and retaining the next generation of talent and leadership to our community. Action 45 also recognizes the role of cleaner and more efficient vehicles, and infrastructure is one way to help address Houston's goal of being carbon neutral. and at Shell, we recognize that reducing greenhouse gas emissions from transportation will require cross-sector coalitions of a scale rarely seen before. Evolve Houston is exactly that kind of coalition, and we're so excited to be here with some of our Evolve partners in the audience, where we are working together for Houston's commitment to transport electrification and improving air quality right here in Greater Houston, and supporting our long-term emissions reductions goals as a community. When it comes to implementation, that's the next phase. I think Marissa probably started that yesterday. She didn't even wait to celebrate launching the plan today. But Shell will be facilitating an energy transition scenario workshop this year as one of those deliverables to bring the city and businesses and community leaders together to understand the potential pathways Houston can take to maintain its leadership through the global energy transition. We've really enjoyed working with the city and with the Resilience Office and many others throughout this year, but it's all been aided by the vision and leadership of the Mayor's Office. And we look forward at Shell to continuing this journey forwards with the entire Houston community. Thank you.
All right. So, Resilient Houston has been approximately 18 months, though it seems like days, in the making. After the initial announcement in August of 2018 that Houston would join 100 Resilient Cities through Shell sponsorship, hundreds of Houstonians and local, regional, national, and international partners have contributed to this process. By participating in workshops, including the 2 Living with Water convenings, which resulted in a report that Mayor Turner released in January, or through helping to develop the resilience assessment last May, by participating in the massive working group that we convened last summer. If you were a working group member, please raise your hand. I know most of you are here. Thank you. By providing comments to the draft in September, or helping to develop a specific goal, target, or action in Resilient Houston. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their hard work and collaboration. Now it's my honor to go quickly through this plan. The results of all of that hard work is a vision for a more resilient Houston. Like the mayor said, a healthy place to live, an equitable, inclusive, and affordable city, a leader in climate adaptation, a city that grows up and not out, and a transformative economy that builds forward. Resilient Houston has 5 chapters, you'll read them all, 18 goals and corresponding targets, and 62 actions. It is a framework for building resilience at every scale. I want to take a moment to thank Colleen Corcoran, who's not here today, who is from Houston, for the extraordinary design. The graphics that you will see and are throughout the document are hers, and she deserves a lot of thanks for that. My focus this afternoon will be to quickly preview each of the 5 chapters with their corresponding targets. Each target is linked to one of the Resilient Houston 18 goals. These targets are meant to be inspiring moonshots as well as achievable metrics, especially when we all work together. So chapter 1, prepared and thriving Houstonians. Targets, provide at least 500,000 Houstonians with preparedness training by 2025. 20,000 hire Houston youth summer jobs in 2020. So that is this year. So that is this year. So please make sure everyone you know is a part of this program, everyone you know. The 3rd target is 0 traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries on Houston streets by 2030. And that is tied to Houston's ongoing Vision Zero program. Chapter 2, safe and equitable neighborhoods. Develop 50 neighborhood plans by 2030, including the 10 complete community action plans completed or in progress. Invest Where's Debbie? Invest $5 million in local artists to create resilient awareness projects across the city by 2025. They keep going. Plant 4.6 million new native trees by 2030. That is approximately 2 trees for every Houstonian. So go out and start planting your 2 trees. Build at least 375,000 new homes across every income level by 2050 to welcome new residents to the city of Houston. Chapter 3, healthy and connected bayous. Remove all habitable structures from the floodway by 2030. We're going to need everybody to help with that. And construct at least 500, hi Beth, construct at least 500 miles of trails and bike lanes by 2025, building on the Houston Parks Board's Bayou 2020, Beyond the Bayous, Houston's Bikes Plan, Metro Next investments, and many, many more. Chapter 4, an accessible and adaptive city. Carbon neutral by 2050 in accordance with the Paris Agreement and Houston's Climate Action Plan. Where's Laura? She's somewhere. There we go. 100 new green stormwater infrastructure projects by 2025. Eliminate geographic disparities in life expectancy by 2050. We can do this. Appoint departmental resilience officers in every city of Houston department in 2020, which will be part of the executive order that Mayor Turner will sign today. All right. Finally, Chapter 5, an innovative and integrated region. Attract or incubate 50 Energy 2.0, or energy innovation, companies in Greater Houston by 2025. Provide 100% of Houstonians accessible to high-frequency public transportation choices within a half-mile radius by 2050. Conserve 24% of undeveloped regional lands as natural spaces. Ensure that 100% of Houstonians and visitors have access to accurate real-time emergency alerting by 2030. And finally, invest $50 billion, at least, in major recovery, mitigation, and modernization projects that increase resilience by 2040. Every regional investment that we make should incorporate resilience benefits. These may seem ambitious to some of you, but Houston is not alone in building resilience. 78 other global cities have developed resilient strategies, as we've heard. Resilient Houston features examples from 18 of these global cities, one for each of our 18 goals. And the Global Resilient Cities Network that you've heard about, that Houston is helping to lead, connects us all as we learn with and from each other to achieve these outcomes. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mayor Turner back up to sign this Resilient Houston Executive Order. I'd like to ask if we could have the council members, city directors, and our program participants to join behind the mayor for a brief photo. We're going to do some logistics right now. After the signing ceremony, I'll ask our panelists to take their seats for the final portion of our program. Sound good? Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Lorian Farrell, Director of Environmental Risk Management for North America at the Global Resilient Cities Network. She will be joined by an esteemed panel of partners to provide insights on to Houston on the implementation, we're starting now, of Resilient Houston.
About a year ago, I moved to New York City to join 100 Resilient Cities, and I'm really thrilled to be continuing that journey today with the Global Resilient Cities Network. As the Director of Environmental Risk Management, and to work with Stewart in supporting our Chief Resilience Officers in their work in North America, in the North America region. So that's enough about me, and now we want to dive into this strategy. And we would like to talk to the panel today to get some tips and advice from their experiences on implementing resilience in their cities. And also we're going to say really good things about Houston and the strategy. Not that we were told to do that, we really believe in this strategy. And we want to talk about how we can help to ensure success for Resilient Houston. So I will start by introducing our panelists, and let me flip around my notes a little bit because I have them out of order. So right to my right, Nicole Farini, who you met earlier in the program. Nicole has joined us from El Paso. Nicole became one of the first, El Paso became one of the first 10 cities to become part of the Resilient Cities Network. Nicole became El Paso's first Chief Resilience Officer. After 3 years of intensive community engagement.
Congratulations on 18 months.
We're not judging here, we're just giving the facts. After 3 years of intensive community engagement, research and planning, Nicole led the team that completed the city's resilience strategy. Now from a platform in the Department of Community and Human Development for the city of El Paso, she continues to press forward for civic empowerment, community prosperity, and municipal leadership across the region. She remains focused on building grassroots resilience, emphasizing dynamic solutions to the challenges of climate instability, urban development, economic prosperity, and social justice. And to Nicole's right is our other Chief Resilience Officer in the state of Texas. From Dallas, we have Genesis Gavino, who currently serves as the Interim Deputy Resilience Officer in the city of Dallas, where she works closely with the executive team across the organization to implement the Resilient Dallas strategy. Genesis works across all departments and with the local community to maximize innovation and minimize the impact of poverty, financial insecurity, health and wellness, equity, transportation, and government performance. And I'm sure by now you're seeing themes, resilient strategies, and the synergies between the cities. Genesis holds a Bachelor of Arts in Business Admin with a focus on management and operations from Washington State University, and a Master's in Public Administration and Certificate in Nonprofit Management from the University of Washington. Welcome, Genesis. And next we have Jeff Hebert, also a former CRO. But now Jeff is a partner at HRNA Advisors and works with cities around the world to develop strategies that mitigate future social, economic, and physical shocks and stresses. He previously served the city of New Orleans as first deputy mayor and chief administrative officer and as a chief resilience officer, among others. Carol Haddock, who is a familiar face to most of you, I'm sure, is the director of Houston Public Works, the largest American Public Works Association accredited public works department in the United States. And she is responsible for streets and drainage, production and distribution of water, collection and treatment of wastewater, and permitting and regulation of public and private construction. Carol's department has 3,900 employees. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. I'm an engineer, I should know this math. And $2.3 billion annual budget. And so we were talking earlier about maybe resources are not exactly the whole problem in reaching our resilience target, and we need to find new innovative ways to reach these goals. And finally, Justin Aaronworth. Justin serves as president and CEO of the Water Institute, an independent applied research group based in Louisiana, with a mission to bring the best available science to inform complex decision-making. Previously, he served as the executive director of the Gulf Coast Ecosystem Restoration Council. This is the federal agency created in the aftermath of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill to administer billions in penalty dollars to restore the ecosystem and revitalize the economy of the Gulf Coast. He previously served in the Obama White House as assistant counsel to the president and at the U.S. Department of Commerce as chief of staff to the deputy secretary. So please join me in welcoming our panel. So we wanted to start by talking about the impact of resilience thinking in cities. And I wanted to get a sense from our panelists what your perspective is and how each of you, I know that each of you has been involved in the creation of a resilience strategy in some way, shape, or form, some multiple strategies. And as I'm sure many, many other types of strategies within cities and city plans as well. So I'd like to go down the line and have each of you take 1 or 2 minutes to tell us from your perspective about the impact that resilience thinking has on cities, and if there was an aha moment in your careers that led you to start weaving that resilience thinking into the work that you do.
Sure. Do you want me to get that started? Okay, so first I just want to say thank you so much to Marissa for inviting us out here. I'm thrilled to be out here in Houston. I actually have some family here, but they're out there in the lands, and so if we can bring them back into the city, that would be real nice. We could have lunch. I won't see them for my trip while I'm here. And it's interesting you talk about an aha moment, because in the context of planning and implementation and building a strategy, what I found most interesting about this process is that it really was not about the deliverable of the document. It was about the journey we all took to get there, and how by identifying these common goals and these sort of measurable benchmarks that sort of set the goalpost for us all to reach together. That was really, I think, one of my aha moments, was that this was never going to happen in one office. It was never going to happen just at the city of El Paso. It had to be our partners. It had to be our regional partners. I don't know how many of y'all are aware, but El Paso is 1/2 of the largest binational metroplex in the Western Hemisphere. We're 2.5 million people in our region, and that includes Ciudad Juarez, and so we are 3 states and 2 countries. And so a lot of that journey and drawing us together and being able to align not only the benchmarks, but also the policies and the regulations and all of the funding, and trying to get that deployed, it's really brought us together as a family. And any of you all that have ever been out to El Paso, you know that our culture is rooted in family, and we are really building our resilience through that. I have said many, many times that whether we're talking about infrastructure and it's housing and streets and stormwater, or we're talking about economic development and financial empowerment and economic mobility, whatever that is, El Paso's asset has always been and will always be her people. And so lifting them up has really been, I think, the greatest joy of the work. And then the last thing I'll say is, because I saw that in your notes, what is the aha moment? I saw that. And I was thinking about it, and then Genesis and I were laughing. I said, well, I've been doing this 5 years, and so I don't know which aha moment, and if you mean the aha or the aha. And I would say that last one, that occurred, I actually have a background in architecture. I came from the private sector. I've never been in government before. And so the aha happened on my first day in government.
Let's see, how do I follow that? For background, I am 7 months into my role as Deputy Resilience Officer for the City of Dallas, and although I have been familiar with our plan, actually being in charge of having to implement this plan has been my aha moment and aha moment as well. But I mean, we're also one of the larger metroplex areas in the country, and trying to get all the neighboring cities to, go along with the plan that they're not really a part of, and all our stakeholders, nonprofit, other agencies in the city. But I think we're now down that road where everybody has bought into resilience, and it's just a matter of getting your message out and talking about how resilience is in everything. That was my other aha moment. Our plan focuses a lot on poverty alleviation and upward mobility, whereas other plans have the infrastructure focus. But we were talking about this before, where you can use that as entry points to talk about the people and how do you lift up the resilience in your people. So, yeah.
The first part of the question about where we are in the resilience journey, I think if I think back to like 2013, 2014, Stewart and and Nicole and Marissa and others at the beginning, where we were then with the movement and even the use of the term and cities who are actually moving forward is phenomenally different than where we are today. I mean, you have cities and counties and states across the country who are outside of the program, who are doing their own resilience strategies, and you know, the state of Florida has appointed a chief resilience officer for the state of Florida, and you're starting to see these things. So the idea that a movement would start, which was sort of just the idea in December of 2013, and would transform the way cities think about their risk and challenges, is phenomenal to where we are today with the 79th strategy and moving towards implementation. So I think for many people involved, you know, in sort of 2012, 2013 on today, it's been a huge leap forward in just the way cities have been thinking. That really was not the case back then. The aha moment for me was like tomorrow for Marissa, and like the tomorrow after your strategy is done, is how do you implement? And I'm so glad Carol is sitting here next to me, because my aha moment was, oh wait, the city actually has a budget. It's not that there is no money, there is money. But how do we integrate and how do we institutionalize resilience thinking in what we already do in city government, not as an add-on, but as a part of the DNA of city government, in order to actually move forward what needs to happen. And that's something that Marissa and I talked about many years ago. She sort of pioneered in LA and has moved it forward here in even a bigger way in Houston on institutionalizing resilience inside government systems, because previous to that, it was always a conversation, and Stewart did a lot of this work in the Obama administration as an add-on grant or another program. No, it's about the DNA and how you spend the money that already exists. So with that, I'm passing it to Carol.
So, Carol Haddock, I think my aha moment's going to be tonight or tomorrow. So, you know, as the one up here who has the day-to-day operations of a public works department, the challenge for us is to both do those things that the city needs day to day. They need water, they need wastewater, and yet layer that with and coordinate that with the thought processes of where do we want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, and are the decisions and the investments that we're making today getting us towards that? Are they getting us towards that? I will tell you, I have had an aha moment, and it's well before all of these discussions happened. And for me, it was really I've been in flooding pretty much my entire life, not just my entire adult career. The first flood I experienced, I was 3.5 years old in New Braunfels, Texas. My family, I grew up in Flash Flood Alley in the Hill Country. Flooding has been part of my family's DNA. We personally have not flooded, but we've been around flooding, responding to flooding, the impacts of flooding, the toll on the community of flooding. And so coming to Houston, it's a different type of flooding that happens here, but it's the same impact to the community and the people. And my aha moment was, as an engineer, you're trained to almost look at these things in a dispassionate kind of numbers approach to solving problems through infrastructure. And it's not until you actually step back and say, it's really not about the pipes, it's about the people, you don't get to the right answers. And so that's the beginning of the aha moment. And then coming to the city from an agency that was focused solely on flood control, recognizing that we have to not just focus on one piece of it, but it's the entire community that has to be addressed in every investment, in every thought, in everything that we do. And in this administration, you see in this resilience plan that it is not built about any one puzzle piece. It's built about how it all fits together, how we all communicate with each other, how the departments leverage what we have to do day to day to help each other be better at serving the community. Because at the end of the day, it is about the people in the community that we serve, not about the infrastructure that I build. And so that's, for me, the challenge that we have going forward. When you talk about the budget, I have a budget, I have people. The question is, how do we take every effort that we're doing and make sure it's moving towards these goals?
Well, thank you. And coming last, I have to be begin by thanking, once again, and recognizing her. Marissa, your timing's perfect. Congratulations and thank you again for bringing us all together, and to the mayor, as well as our partners. We had the privilege of working with HRNA and Asakura Robinson and Rice and Kinder Institute and Wagner and Ball from New Orleans. And it's a remarkable team, and I also want to acknowledge Colleen McHugh, who's put just a tremendous amount of thought and effort into this. A round of applause, please.
Where is Colleen? I don't see her. Oh, she's behind the pillar.
But I think the aha moment for me really came, and I think it builds on so much of what was said. What I think is so special about this strategy, and it not only looks backwards but forwards. So for me, the aha moment was being in Louisiana, following Hurricane Katrina, and then you saw the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. We've done a lot of planning, a lot of thinking on how to prepare for and respond to the next hurricane. We didn't do as much planning and thinking necessarily about what you would do in an oil spill. And as the thinking continued to advance, and the strategies and the plans that were put into place were developed in a holistic way, when you looked across the Gulf of Mexico, what you found is that those communities, those states and those communities, who were not simply thinking about how to respond to what happened last, but also forward-looking challenges, they were prepared to be able to use funds that came in a thoughtful way. Because the biggest danger, I think, is in preparing for what's happened in the past, not for what's in the future. And then when funds start to come in, because unfortunately we know there will be more disasters, there will be additional funds appropriated in response to those disasters. But if we're just doing one-off projects, or what we like to call random acts of restoration and protection, if it's just a little thing here and a little thing there and a little thing here, unfortunately you miss the opportunity. And what's so brilliant, I think, about this movement, as Jeff referred to it, and what's so powerful about Shell's support for this, is that there's an actionable strategy that we can move forward with now that allows us to also be prepared for what we don't see right now and be in a position to address it on the front end where it costs less and we can mitigate the damage. So that was my aha moment, and I think it's really encapsulated in the entire process that developed the strategy and the strategy itself.
Thank you, Justin. That's a perfect segue into the next thing that I wanted to talk about. When you mentioned the words an actionable strategy that will allow us to move forward. Before I go there, I want to just say I had no idea when I came up with my aha moment question that it would be so multi-layered in the response. I am sorry for bringing up the trauma. However, I think it's interesting to note that this is hard work, and we are happy today and excited that we have this actionable framework to move forward on. But we shouldn't recognize the fact that it is hard work, and it takes a lot of champions to keep the work moving. And so with that in mind, I'd like to turn the floor back over to Carol and talk about, because you are now going to be tasked with quite a few of these actions in your portfolio in public works. And what is it about this Resilience Houston strategy that you're excited about, that you're looking forward to implementing, and that will allow you to keep the momentum moving as we turn to the hard work of implementation?
So I'll be honest with you, I think the most exciting part about it is that me and many of my staff are going to be able to get past a feeling of helplessness. Because after many of these events, people turn to us and look at us and say, why haven't you, or why didn't you, or what are you going to do? And now having this adopted forward-looking framework of this is what we will do to make sure we are resilient moving forward, that it empowers us to take those steps even before the next disaster comes. There are going to be very, very difficult discussions in the communities moving forward over some of these goals. These goals will challenge us to not do it the way we've always done it, to not accept that the status quo is the way that we are going to succeed moving forward. And that becomes very personal very quickly when you're talking about some of these areas. And so I think the thing for me that is empowering, exciting, forward-looking is the fact that we have a framework to have these discussions. in an honest framework, in an honest environment, and that we can make decisions. We can be very thoughtful, very forward-looking, but it's around what is the end goal. And we can keep looking at that. And it's not even the end goal, because it's a journey. Resilience is not a destination. Resilience is is a journey. But we can have those discussions and not have them devolve into a finger pointing or why didn't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. So on that vein, I'd like to ask Genesis and Nicole, as two CROs who have completed strategies, and I think it's almost unfair to ask you these questions because your strategies are not that old. A year and a half for Dallas, 3 years for El Paso. So keep this in mind when I say, tell us how implementation works in your cities. Is there any advice that you could offer to Houston based on what you've been experiencing since your launch day that has been helpful for you in reaching some of your implementation goals?
For me, I think it doesn't get better. No, I'm just kidding. It does get better.
Please tell me it gets better.
It doesn't. It just gets harder. No, I mean, I think my advice would be directly to the community is hold the city accountable. I truly appreciate my community for constantly holding my feet to the fire, asking me, what are you doing to move the needle and to accomplish your goals? I can't go anywhere without somebody asking me, so what are you doing about that? And I'm really sick of going to community meetings at this point, but I really appreciate them for that because the plan is out there, they know the plan belongs to them, and that we need to be held accountable for making sure that the goals are achieved and that we are doing what we said we're going to do.
Genesis, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I think one of the things that we have to remember is that even once you have a resilience strategy and you have a plan, the word resilience is the ability to survive, adapt, and thrive. And the adapt part is really, really important. So just because you put it down and you made it glossy and you published it, doesn't mean it can't continue to change. So we are going on 2 years in implementation in El Paso. The first thing that we did in order to get this done, to a point that Jeff was making, is that we did institutionalize. You've got to make it part of what you do every single day. And so what the city of El Paso did is we took the entirety of the resilience strategy and fully embedded it into the city strategic plan, which guides how we budget. And so by tying our resilience actions and our resilience benchmarks into the budgeting process and working with our council and our community on getting that done, now we all have ownership of it. And I will tell you that it has evolved. I mean, there's a number of things. I think, actually, Genesis was asking me just before we sat down, are y'all looking at doing like a revision or an update? I said, no. No, we're not, because we're constantly doing that. Right? We're constantly revisiting it. We're constantly looking at it. The second thing that I will say is that in terms of adaptability is that, and I think you said it just a moment ago, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so when El Paso wrote a resilience strategy, we wrote it about managing a water scarcity crisis. We wrote it about empowering El Pasoans. We wrote it about economic development. And we thought we knew what was coming. And then August 3rd happened in El Paso. And we had a domestic terror event in our city. And it rocked my whole world. And I mean, for obvious reasons, but me personally, because on every newscast and in every community, everybody was talking about being resilient. We have to be resilient. We can't let the hate beat us. We can't. And for a minute, we said, oh my God, how do we miss this? How come this isn't in the strategy? And then I went, but it is. Because empowering our people and making sure our people were ready and that our people could come together was in the strategy. And as a result of that event, we created something called One Fund El Paso, which is a permanent structure that in the event of any disaster, whether it be a domestic terror event, a flood, or anything else, we have a mechanism to draw in donations and get them out to the community immediately. We raised $11.8 million in 4 months, and we helped those people. That's what being resilient is about, and that's what being adaptive and not being so married to the strategy, that's how you get it done.
Great. And it raises the point that you can't plan for everything, that the problems that you think are over there can come to your backyard. And Houston is a global city, well recognized around the world. And one of the things we were debating or talking about earlier was how do you then translate that the global, what is happening around the world, and we seem more and more connected than ever before. And how do you create a resilient Houston that can respond to some of the global challenges, shocks and stresses, and also make it local and meaningful for residents who live here on the ground. And I was wondering if Jeff and Justin, if you could speak to a bit of that in just a few more minutes of time that we have.
Well, the one thing I'll say really quickly is an example of Jason's work in energy transition and the impact that Houston can have on the future. And there are things like the overall carbon emissions and those sorts of things which are important both at the local level but contribute to what's going on globally. But there are also what are the programs at sort of the neighborhood and individual scale that can be put in place that contribute to that. So energy efficiency programs, and there's all sorts of beyond transportation, other sort of things that are going on about electrification of other types of things that we use on a daily basis. And how does that all layer up? So taking something sort of from a very high level of what scientists have shown is contributing to what's happening in Houston and everywhere else, all the way down to sort of a local economic issue, and then down to what happens at sort of a neighborhood scale. One of the things that Marissa and I have talked about for many years and is in this strategy is the impact, and this is something through the Global Resilient Cities program, 100RC, is the impact on the most vulnerable populations. And what you find is smart decision making at the individual and very localized level that has an impact on quality of life and affordability also have outsized benefits going upstream. And I think that's represented in this strategy and shows how you can go up and down.
Great, thanks, Justin.
Yeah, and I'll build upon that by adding a couple other observations. So one is, I think what's so important about the strategy and how it's configured is that there are going to be difficult decisions that need to be made. And we're not going to be able to do absolutely everything that we would want to do. No community can. So how do you make those decisions? How do you engage with people? How do you ensure that that decision making is both inclusive as well as rigorous? And I think the foundation for that, for some of those gut-wrenching decisions, exists here. And that is something I think that connects in globally. I also think the regional aspect of this. The mayor talked about partnership with Harris County. Look, storms and flooding doesn't care about the city boundaries, doesn't care about county boundaries, doesn't care about state lines. Also doesn't care about jurisdictional lines between city departments, doesn't care about the difference between a series of state departments or how you work with the federal government. And so, again, having a clear vision and strategy for being able to bring people together, doing it in an inclusive way, which this process has been all about, is remarkable. And the final thing that I'll add, and I think Shell again has been just a great partner and leader in this, is how do you stack incentives to be able to attract not only local, state, and federal investment, but also private sector investment. We've been seeing a lot in this geography and across the Gulf of Mexico increasingly, the use of nature-based defenses. Well, that's great. It can help you protect critical infrastructure. You're improving the environment. You're adding to resiliency in a way that you can measure. And by the way, you're also capturing carbon in these projects. So all of a sudden, when you start thinking that way, and it goes back to what I think everyone has said during this program, it's a mind shift change. You can attract additional investment. You can do it in a holistic and coordinated way by not thinking in silos. And, it's trite to use those words and busting out silos and all that kind of stuff. But when you're actually implementing it, it's difficult and you need this first step, which Marissa and the mayor have led. So this is a really exciting time to be in Houston.
I just want to add one thing because I think, I've been sitting up here talking about El Paso. I want to talk about Texas for a minute. Now you got 3 cities in Texas, and we've had the mind shift. We are having that conversation with the other big cities in Texas. We need a mind shift at the state level. We need a mind shift in terms of how our legislature is thinking about cities in our state and how we start to work together to achieve the goals of all of Texas. both rural and urban. But at the same time, a giant percentage of our population in Texas lives in cities today, and it is the responsibility of the state legislature to work with us and have that mind shift. And so part of the power of this network is that we can do that. We can do that together because it's our combined voices. You talk about 2.5 million people here in Houston. How many people are in Dallas? 1.3 million people in Dallas. Okay, so El Paso is just under 1 million, but I got 2.5 million in the region. We got a lot of people, a lot of voices that we are representing, and they've got to listen.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you all. And we are out of time, if you can believe that. That went by so fast for me. I don't know how you all felt. But I really want to thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. Today has been a celebration for a huge accomplishment. We are so proud to be a part of this, Marissa, and thank you for inviting us. But it's also a call to action. And I think you can tell from the passion on the panel that there's a lot of work to do, but there's also a lot of help. And we're excited to see where Houston goes on the implementation. So thank you very much, everyone.